Alright, so here is the biofuels combustion testing apparatus. Here's our constant volume control chamber, testing chamber, and in it we have the Sturman injector and then a bunch of piping that's set up for our pre-burn. And our pre-testing conditions, currently we're at about 225 degrees temperature for the chamber itself. And what we're going to do is we're going to put in a pre-burn where we're going to fill up the chamber with a lean mixture of ethylene and O2, and then we're going to, using this chamber here, we're going to do a fuel plug with stoichiometric ethylene and O2, and we're going to use a spark plug to ignite that, and that will ignite the mixture in the chamber, which will give us a peak in pressure and temperature. And then when that temperature reaches the desired settings and conditions, we're going to, using the code, we're going to shoot off the injector. And the injector is here, and you can't see it in this shot very well, but the fuel, it's pulling in the F76 diesel fuel, and it's just using the high pressure hydraulic fluid. And so if you come over here, we can see the GUI, and this is our using lab view. This is just what our setup is, and what we're going to do right now is go through the startup process. And so we're going to put a vacuum on the chamber. So turning on the vacuum pressure, and if you look at this gauge, you can see that this gauge is going to start to decrease, and we're going to take it to -14 gauge pressure, which represents our vacuum in the chamber. And what we assume is once we get to our -14 gauge pressure, there still might be some air in the chamber, but we just assume it's an air mixture, and that's not going to mess up with when we fill it using our partial pressures, or when we fill it with the ethylene and the O2 in the air. So we're getting close. Alright, so there we're at -14, so we'll just close off our vacuum pump. And now we're going to fill the chamber, and we're using this with partial pressures. We have it specified. We're going to do a 3% ethylene burn, and so on our code we have it programmed in for 3%, and Dave's going to tell me how much ethylene we need to fill into the chamber.
First we're going to open up our supplies for ethylene and O2 makeup and air. First calculation is just going to be the ethylene at 3%. So currently we just have a value of -11.6. We'll have to bring it up to -9.3, which is the associated 3% of ethylene.
Right. So
and he's going to be doing that manually over there on the.
So it's -9.3. All right.
Next we're going to calculate the O2 makeup. That's going to be a 9.6. So you have to bring that up to a -1.6.
-1.6.
And then I'll fill up the remaining mixture with air up to approximately about 60 psi. Okay. Next is the ethylene air igniter plug, which is at stoichiometric at 6.33%. So that'll be calculated. Have to bring up ethylene up to 97.6
97.6.
psi. And then remaining with air of 331.2.
Alright.
Okay, so at this point, everything is set up. The chamber's been filled with the pre-mixture of 3% ethylene. We also have the fuel plug with stoichiometric. We're going to be closing the valves for the supplies for the air, ethylene, and O2. And at this point, we're just setting up for the ignition sequence.
Yep. So we're going to turn on our generator pulse with TPI. And then a couple checks. We just want to make sure that we're running on our triggers for the camera and for the injector. And we have power to all the different components. And then in order to preserve our pressure gauge, we like to seal it because they're going to get high pressure in there that it's not rated to. And then our Kistler pressure gauge is turned on, ready to go. Our camera, we already set this up before. We're going to be taking 10,000 frames per second, and this will trigger when the injector triggers. And it's set, yeah, it's set to trigger. So we are good. We're done. Alright, so I'm going to start the ignition sequence, and it'll delay for 10 seconds, and then listen closely, you can hear what's going on. So here it goes. Alright, so what we heard in that sequence were, we heard the first sounds you heard were the valves opening and closing to make sure everything was ready for the ignition, and then we heard the pre-burn coming in, and that was that kind of high-pitched ping that you heard. That was the pre-burn igniting, and then about 1.4 seconds later is what we had the delay set for the Sturman injector to ignite, and so you'd have heard that as well. And then what this outputs is we output the temperature, we output the information from two thermocouples that we have inside, which is a 3 thousandths thermocouple, which looks like this. It's very fine. So there's a 3 thousandths in there, and we're in about a ½ inch off of the chamber wall. And then we also have a 5 thousandths, which is a little bit thicker. And that's, so we'll pull the data from these two thermocouples, and that's really the main data that we're taking, and we can plot that in MATLAB. And we also have some pressure information. And so this outputs a text file that we're able to read, and then we also have the images from our camera that we set up.
With that, that's pretty much a conclusion of the test. We'll show you all the data as we process it. We'll show you the videos, and we'll show you the temperature profiles. And thank you very much. Appreciate it.